Alright, so here we go. By popular request, here's going to be lesson 1. So we're going to go to the internet, and I'm going to go to Fredrik's website. So I've got his website marked. Here it is in my favorites. So here's the TeensySaber V3 website. And the important thing on the V3 website, particularly on this first page, is it tells you how to put the Teensy together. It's a lot about the hardware. It's got photos, explains what all the pads are on the TeensySaber. Now, right below all of this and wire gauges, you have this thing called the configurator. Now, the configurator, which starts here and it ends here in this white box. When you first log into this, let's see if I can. I guess it's not going to let me go back. But let's say you want to do a normal tri-cree LED, and you're gonna just do a single bladed saber, and you're gonna do an RGB crystal chamber. You got 2 momentary buttons, and let's say you want to add an OLED display. What happens is, once you select all these things in the configurator, then you get 2 things. You get a wiring diagram, which here's a wiring diagram for a tri-cree with an RGB crystal chamber LED and an OLED display, which you can see where all the wires hook up. But you also get this configuration file in this white box, and depending on what selections you make here, both the wiring diagram and the configuration, your basic configuration file changes. So watch the wiring diagram down below when I make the changes here. So now let's say, okay, I want to do a NeoPixel saber, but I also want to do like a Kylo Ren NeoPixel saber. Oh, you can't do a Kylo with OLED display. So you get rid of the OLED. And you can't do an RGB crystal chamber, but you can do let's just say none, which is not true. There is a way to do a crystal chamber. You just wire it in parallel to your main blade. So now here's the wiring diagram for a crossguard saber. So this is your main blade. This is one quillion, and this is the other quillion, which the quillion's negative is hooked to LED 4 and 5 here, and this is LED 6, which is not used, which you could use that to power something else if you only use one data line for both the quillions, for instance. Then you could use this other data line for. That's a whole nother subject. The bottom line is, let's say you wanted to build a NeoPixel saber staff. Boom. Now you've got a wiring diagram for a NeoPixel saber staff. So the bottom line on all this is a lot of people, I didn't even understand this the first time I went on Fredrik's site, didn't understand what this configurator does. It gives you the wiring diagrams for whatever configuration you put in up here for your Teensy. Not only that, it then gives you this configuration, which is your basic configuration file. I mean, Fredrik's already written that for you. All you got to do is do exactly what it says here. Cut and paste this into a new file called my_saber1.h. Then follow the instructions on the software page. Now, I always call my configuration files when I'm first beginning something that's unique to that particular lightsaber. For instance, my Graflex lightsaber, I called my configuration file, the initial one was Tom's Graflex underscore configuration.h. But then I ended up modifying it so much that I made a new configuration file, and that one was tomgraphlex2 underscore configuration.h. Basically, when you make your configuration file, you want to make each configuration file, you want to name it. So where he's telling you to name it right there in that section I highlighted, you want to name it something that's unique to that particular lightsaber. And the cool part is once you get these to compile, and once you address them in the lightsaber.ino software, you can go back and you say like, okay, well, I want to update my Graphics saber with the latest software. Well, you just go into lightsaber.ino and select your Graphics saber configuration file and compile it, and then upload it. And it's just that easy. So that's why you want to make this file name some unique name that's related to your saber. The important part on your file name is that it ends in .h. The rest of this, it doesn't matter what it says, because you can change how you address it. Alright, so I'm going to open up Internet Explorer, and of course I have Fredrik's website. I have it bookmarked. Bingo, there it is. So basically the first thing I do, really my step one is, and I think it's important everybody does this, is on top of this white box here, right below the wiring diagram, you have this thing called software page, and you click on software page, and there he shows you all the stuff that you need to download and install to make your lightsaber work. So here you have number one, the first thing you need to install is the Arduino IDE, and the IDE is basically the development environment for your program, and it's basically a computer program that takes all the programming that Fredrik wrote and combines it with your configuration file. Then after you download and install Arduino IDE, you have to go get TeensySaber, which is basically a plug-in for the Arduino IDE to help it communicate and understand the programming language specific to the Teensy 3.2, which the TeensySaber board is basically a shield board for the Teensy 3.2. And this TeensySaber is a plugin for the Arduino IDE that helps Arduino 1.8.3 understand the specific details for the Teensy 3.2. So that's all TeensySaber is. It's basically a plugin for Arduino 1.8.3, and it's generally going to be installed in the same directory. Lastly, it tells you need a micro USB cable. That should be no duh. You got to plug in your TeensySaber to your computer somehow. USB to micro USB is what I use. The last thing is the TeensySaber firmware. Well, what's the TeensySaber firmware? Well, here it is right here. Download 1.264 here. And now I'm going to minimize all this. Now, I'm not going to show an install because I'm not going to uninstall my software and reinstall it. But when you install the Arduino environment, of course, you get the typical, where do you want to install this? Is this okay? Well, where my computer chose to install it was, and try to get this up a little bit higher, is in this. Let me show you how I got there again. So I went to my computer, but this is where it installed it. I followed the directory where it installed and remembered where it was, but it's in my C drive, and it's in Program Files x86 Arduino. And there you see my Arduino folder. This is actually where the Arduino installed when I installed the original software. And also the TeensySaber plugin was also installed in this same Arduino folder. Now, once you download Fredrik's lightsaber program, and I don't have one on here, but basically Fredrik's lightsaber program, when you download it, let's say you downloaded what do I want to do here? I'm canceling. Oh, let's just stop. So basically, when you download this 1.264 program, what that is basically this folder called lightsaber. And actually I have one over here. There you go. There's 1.264. So let's let me drag this over and minimize this window. And I'll show you this lightsaber folder, and I'm trying to see if I have it unzipped. When you download 1.264, you're going to get this lightsaber 1.264 zip folder, and then what you're going to do is right click and extract all, and if you save this on your desktop, then of course it's going to extract those files onto your desktop. But you can go explore what's in it. Well, if you look in this zip folder, you have a folder that's entitled lightsaber. And if you look in that folder, you have all this other stuff. And then I'm going to close out of that. And let me go back. So I'm going to go back to my computer, my C drive, program files, x86, Arduino, and then boom. So guess what? When you're in the Arduino folder, okay, like if we go back to program files x86, here's my Arduino folder. You double click the Arduino folder and look at this folder in the Arduino folder. It's in the Arduino directory, and it's in this same area where I have mine organized by file type, so that's why all the folders are together, because that helps me think better. But you take that lightsaber 1.246, once you extract it, and you take that folder and you put it right here in the Arduino directory, and it falls right after libraries and before reference. And if we open that file, this is the lightsaber folder. This is the contents of it. Blades, buttons, common, config, which is important. We'll get to that later. Display, which is OLED stuff, functions, motion, MTP, sound styles, and then you got all this computer gobbledygook down here. But amidst the computer gobbledygook down here, you have the infinity symbol and this thing called lightsaber.ino. Lightsaber.ino is the program you are going to open that opens all of Fredrik's computer programming for the TeensySaber V3, which we're still not at the point where we're going to do that yet. But that's basically all the software on the TeensySaber web page, and where mine is all installed, so that you know that you have done this correctly. And also starting from Fredrik's web page to how we got there and installed all this stuff in the first place. So we've installed the software from Fredrik's page onto our computer, which I showed you where that's at. It's in, when I installed it, it's in my computer, C drive, program files, x86, Arduino. So there's all the stuff we've installed to program the boards. Now, we want to start working on our configuration file. So to make our configuration file, the first thing we do is open your browser go to Fredrik's TeensySaber page, which there it is, bookmarked. And here's Fredrik's TeensySaber page. We're going to scroll down to below that picture, below wire gauges, to, oh, here we are again at the configurator. And let's say I'm going to do a NeoPixel crossguard. So I'm going to go NeoPixel crossguard with 2 momentary buttons and none of this stuff. This is all possible with a crossguard, but it's a little bit more complicated, so I'm just not going to show that. So the first, we get 2 things. Remember, the configurator gives us 2 things. The configurator gives us our wiring diagram for our NeoPixel crossguard with the 2 buttons, and of course, you know, our speaker and recharge port and battery, and the quillions and the main blade. And it gives us the wiring diagram for the TeensySaber for all that, which that looks kind of complicated, but it's really very simple. The second thing the configurator gives us is this config file. This is his sample config file. He's given you a starting point right here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our initial config file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of this text in the white box, which is his example config file he's giving you. And there I'm at the bottom. The indef is the end of it, and you know that's the bottom of the text box. Then once I've highlighted all that text, I'm going to right click, copy. Now all of that text is now on my clipboard. Now this is how I make the configuration file. You could do yours differently. To keep it simple, I start a new text document, and how I do that is I right click on the desktop, new text document, and I'm going to call this, let's say, Tom Kylo.h, and that's what I want to name it. But I want to get rid of this text. I want the file name to end in .h. Now the computer's going to freak out when I do that because I'm renaming it, and it says it's going to be unusable. If you change a file name extension, the file might become unusable. Are you sure you want to change it? Yes. So now it's a .h, and now my computer changed it, and it's like, hey, we don't know what this is. It is a file that can be opened. On my computer, you know, I can open it with any of these programs. I like WordPad. So I'm going to open it with WordPad. And by the way, I got to that by right click. And now I have my tomkylo.h in WordPad. And I'm going to, here it is, you know, this is a blank document right now, but it's not going to be in a second, because now I'm going to paste my configuration file, all the text that I highlighted from Fredrik's webpage. So here's my configuration file. It is awesome. Look at that. Here it is. Now, on the configuration file, you know, anytime you have these comments, it's just Fredrik's trying to give you information about what all this contains. So that's how you start reading all this. So, and all this fire speed, valid values are 1 through 10, define fire speed. Now here is where he's actually defining the fire speed, and here he tells you it can be anywhere from 1 to 10, and he's got it set at 2. And then how long to wait before firing up the crossguards, he's got 800 milliseconds there in the defined, you know, the number sign defined is the actual value. Now this is in milliseconds, so it's currently, the delay is set for 800 milliseconds. And then he tells you about all these other values A, B, and C can have, where you can define, you know, the different things that are going on with the fire blade. I'm not going to get into all that. Just leave it as it is. So then we get into the presets. Each of these is a preset. So this whole section here is one preset. How each preset is laid out is this first quotation is the actual font name in on your SD card. So this particular preset 1, is going to use the font name Teensy SF. So on your SD card, you know, if you're going to use this Teensy SF for preset 1, that you must have a folder on your SD card called Teensy SF, exactly like this, and then that folder will contain the Teensy SF font. The next, after the comma, you have tracks and Mars wave. So you're going to have another folder on your SD card, and it's going to be called tracks, and I'll get into this later. And within that folder, you're going to have a wave called Mars wave, which, you know, mine don't, but you can certainly you can customize these to make them whatever they want. I mean, you could have a tracks folder, and you could have, for instance, Metallica bell tolls, and I'm going to call Metallica bell tolls wave. You can make this whatever you want, but the bottom line is you must have a folder called tracks on your SD card, and you've got to have this bell tolls wave in that tracks folder, and then this will work just fine. So next, and remember, we're talking about, this is preset number 1 right here. All this information is for preset 1. The first line underneath which font we're going to use and what music track we're going to use for preset 1, because this is your first preset. This whole segment is preset 1. The first line underneath your tracks and font is your blade, how your main blade is going to be. So it's going to be the fire blade. And then the second line is going to be auxiliary or Quillian blades. And so you can see the Quillian blades 1 and 2 are both the fire blade as well. All of this, the font that we're using and the folder it's in, and the music we're using in the folder it's in, and your main blade style, and your first Quillian and your second Quillian, all this combined is called a preset. So a preset is more than, you know, a typical font on a Plector or an NEC board, because your preset actually includes what font we're going to use, what music we're going to use, if any, and then what blade styles are for your main and each Quillian. You can make each Quillian different if you wired them like Fredrik showed. But the bottom line is that is our configuration file. Now I'm going to save the configuration file, save, and remember we saved it on our desktop, and I'm doing this so you can see how I'm doing all this. And it's called Tom Kylo. Actually, you know what, we're going to rename that Tom Kylo, and I should just use all lowercase letters, keeps it simple, _ config.h. So here's my Tom Kylo config.h, and we've saved it on my desktop. Now what do we do with this config file? So now I'm going to go back over to my computer. I'm going to open my C drive, program files, x86, Arduino. Now I'm going to go open this lightsaber folder, which is Fredrik's lightsaber 1.246. I'm going to open that folder, and in the lightsaber folder we have these subfolders: blades, buttons, common, config, display, functions, motion, MTP, sound, and styles. In this folder called config, boom, look at that, here's all these config.h files. Well, that's where we're getting ready to put our Tom Kylo file that we just made. So I'm going to drag this file from the desktop into this folder. Boom. There it is, Tom Kylo _ config.h. Now that is in our config folder. I'm going to close out of that. I'm going to go back in. Tom Kylo config.h. So here's the cool thing. These are all of our configuration files. They're all in the config folder, And you know, if you look at this section here, Tom Graflex, Tom Graflex 2, Tom Kylo, these are all my personal files that I've made for my sabers. And not only that, you have these 3 config files up here. This Imp Knight is the saber I'm currently working on, and then Kylo Fire, which was my initial Kylo saber, and Kylo Fire 2 configuration file, which was my Kylo sabers that, you know, that was the finished configuration file for my Kylo sabers, which I'm not going to show that to you because it's all mine. But the bottom line is there's all our configuration files within the lightsaber and config subdirectory. So again, I'm going to show you how we get to that one more time. Number one, we had saved our config file on the desktop. Then I opened my computer, my C drive, program files x86, Arduino, lightsaber, config, and boom, there they all are. There is all your config files. That is where you save your config file to. So now that we have installed the software, we have created our configuration file, named it and saved it and placed it into the lightsaber folder. The next segment we're going to go into, now I want to put all this together, compile it, and upload it onto my board. So the next phase will stop at upload. Alright, number one, we've downloaded and installed all the software required. Arduino, the TeensySaber plugin for Arduino, and the lightsaber. I've showed you where to install the lightsaber. 1.246 is the current as of the making of this video. Showed you where to install that, which it's all located in the my computer, C drive, program files x86, Arduino. This is where all of my files are located. They're all in Arduino. There's Fredrik's lightsaber 1.246 right there. It's that subfolder inside of the Arduino folder. And you know, as we stated in the last segment, we've also created our config file off of Fredrik's web page, and there it is, tomkylo_config.h. There is our configuration file. Now, what do we do with all this? We're ready to open the environment to begin addressing our new configuration file in the lightsaber program. Well, how do we do that? The first thing we do is we open up my computer. We want to go to the Arduino folder, x86, Arduino. Now, once we're here, we're going to open up the lightsaber folder, and then in that folder is this program called lightsaber.ino. Now, I've also created a shortcut here on my desktop, so I don't have to go to this stupid folder stuff every time. I just go right to my shortcut and it opens this. But that's where the program resides. The actual link for the program is within the lightsaber folder. When I double click on this lightsaber.ino, it's going to open the Arduino environment but with lightsaber.ino. So all of Fredrik's program will automatically load into this. You don't have to do anything. And everybody talks about how complicated all this is. Well, no, it's not. It is, but it isn't. Fredrik's already written all the software. All you have to do is tell the software where to find your configuration file and compile it and upload it onto your lightsaber. There's nothing else you have to do. So here is lightsaber.ino, and you can see up at the top when you first open it up, this is Teensy lightsaber firmware. This is the Teensy lightsaber firmware that Fredrik wrote. Now here's all of Fredrik's computer brain stuff, blah 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 blah. It's a bunch of gobbledygook. I don't understand it. You know, it references all the stuff that he programmed and put into all those little folders and subdirectories and everything that make the lightsaber, that make the TeensySaber work. Now, at the very top, you know, it basically has copyright, all this other stuff. And then you get down to this section, you know, where he talks about it in about line 26. So you can see here on lines 24 through 35, you have all these define config file, define config file, define config file, and then you have this, V3, crossguard, Graphics, prop shield, OWK, test bench, toy saber, Profi board, Tom Graphics 2, Hilo Fire 2, Imp Knight, and sample, which was another one that I did when I was testing this capture software. So I'm going to comment that out. And I'm probably going to end up, you know what, I'm going to delete that, because I don't even, this was a sample that I made before, so you're not going to have that. Basically, the bottom line is when you get this software, one of these, and I can't remember which one it is, but one of these is not going to have these two dashes before it. And whichever one doesn't have the forward slash is which the config file that the lightsaber.ino program is going to work. Well, we just made our own config file. So now what I'm going to do is, you see this basic outline of this text. It's number sign, define, config file, quote, and then the name and directory of the config file. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to enter. I've got a new line. I'm going to go number sign, define, space, config, config, come on now, config, all caps, underscore, file, quote. Then I name the folder that it's in, which is config. We put it in the config folder, and we called it Tom Kylo underscore config.h, quote. Now, if you look at all these again, all these configuration files, they're all preceded by these two forward slashes. The two forward slashes means that the environment is going to ignore all these things. It doesn't even look at those. It says, hey, these aren't even computer, that we're not even reading those because it's preceded by the two forward slashes. But this one is not. So the environment is going to look at this file, the one I've highlighted. This is the configuration file that lightsaber.ino is going to look at when it compiles. So once I have, commented out all these other configuration files and defined my configuration file and where it's at, which here it is, it's in the config folder, which that's where we put it, and the name of the file is tomkylo underscore config.h. Once we do that, I'm going to click on this check mark in the upper left hand corner, and lightsaber.ino is going to begin compiling, and I'll come back once it compiles. Well, that didn't work out quite as expected. I got an error, and it lit up down here in orange, and it said, hey, you didn't include xpec's file name or file name. And it said, see, it says right here, the config's got to include file name. So I'm like, what did I do wrong? So I come back up here, number sign, define, config, FIE. Oh, I didn't put config file. And then config / Tom Kylo. I deleted all that by accident. Config.h, quote. I actually didn't put the L in the word file, and that's why I got that compilation error. So now I'm going to go back, let's try that. So now it's compiling again. Alright, we're compiling. We're almost done compiling. I fast forwarded, so I didn't record the whole compilation procedure because it takes quite a while, but you can see all the stuff it's doing down below. And we're very close to finished compiling here. You can see the green progress bar. Boom. When you finish compiling, you will get this box, and it says press button on Teensy manually to enter program mode. Once this pops up, our configuration file has compiled into Fredrik's excellent software. Now we are ready to program our board, which is the next segment. So now that we've finished compiling and we've got our upload screen, I have connected a USB cable to my computer, and I'm now going to plug in the micro USB into a Teensy 3.2. And you just heard the computer recognize it. I've got the light on my Teensy 3.2 board. Now I'm going to press the programming button. And what I want you to do is watch this little box when I press the programming button. It's programming. Boom, it's rebooted and we are good to go. That is it. Your TeensySaber and Teensy 3.2 is now programmed. And it is currently running this config Tom Kylo config.h. That is all there is to do to program your TeensySaber.